The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world.
This simple phrase, spoken by a mysterious man in a dreamlike void, is our introduction to one of the most defining games of the century. Half-Life 2 begins with this haunting welcome, a signal that you are entering a world that's as strange, oppressive, and unnatural yet beautiful. A world that, despite being over 2 decades old, remains unmatched in its precision, atmosphere, and pacing. I played Half-Life 2 for the very first time in 2025, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's one of the best games I've ever played. While many modern games smother themselves with endless systems, bloated open worlds, and checklist design, Half-Life 2 is lean, intentional, and confident in its design. Every level is handcrafted to introduce new ideas, explore them just long enough to keep you engaged, and then shift gears, whether it's mechanically, aesthetically, or emotionally. The game doesn't just hold up, it's a lot better than the modern slop being churned out these days. And if you do enjoy the video, do the thing the algorithm likes, it really helps the small channel out. And I've also recently played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines for the first time. If you do enjoy the video, let me know if you want me to follow this video up with a review of this beautiful janky mess of a game. Now, my knowledge of Half-Life was surprisingly small before jumping into Half-Life 2. I know there's an alien invasion, there's a mystery man in a suit, he plays Gordon Freeman, a scientist who is just as adept with an assault rifle as he is in a laboratory, and I know the series ends on a cliffhanger. And I have also played the Half-Life 1 community remake Black Mesa a year or two ago, which I thought was excellent, so at least have some grounding into the world I'm stepping into. One of the most striking things about Half-Life 2 is its subtle but ever-present undercurrent of cosmic horror. Not in the overtly Lovecraftian sense of tentacled beasts and ancient gods, but more in a philosophical dread that seeps through the whole world. The Combine are not just alien invaders, they're a manifestation of a universal entropy. They're a civilization so advanced and abstract that they defy comprehension. Their presence is felt more than it's understood, their origin is unknown, their goals are unknowable, their very architecture is unnerving, cold, and unnatural. You see glimpses of the horrific machinery used to convert humans into transhuman soldiers. You walk among the Combine technology that seems to warp space and time, and through it all, you never quite grasp the full scope of what's happening. Half-Life 2 revels in making the player feel small. And then there's the G-Man. He seems to be an avatar of some cosmic indifference. He exists beyond cause and effect, pulling strings with a smirk. His monologues are laced with a bureaucratic menace, as if the fate of Earth is just another line in an interdimensional ledger. He speaks in riddles, hinting at vast powers and contracts far beyond your understanding. This, more than any boss fight or cutscene, is what makes Half-Life 2 terrifying. The horror comes from implication. You're not saving the world. You're not even fighting the true enemy. You're a pawn in a cosmic game of chess that you don't even know that you're playing. And in 2025, with the added knowledge that Half-Life 3 and Episode 3 never released in full form, that lingering ambiguity feels ever more haunting. The game doesn't just end on a cliffhanger. It ends as if you're being placed back in stasis as the player, reminded that you were never truly in control. Half-Life 2 is a masterclass in environmental storytelling. There's no lengthy cutscenes that wrest control from the player, dialogue unfolds around you, characters talk while you explore, moments happen to you, not just in front of you. The world is littered with details that imply a much larger narrative. Refugee outposts, propaganda broadcasts, graffiti, shrines to lost family members. The Combine don't need to monologue about their dominance. You see it in the hollowed out cities and industrial complexes. You feel it in the quiet despair of the civilians. This subtlety is rare these days. Where modern games tend to spell things out with an exposition dump, Half-Life 2 trusts the player to pay attention. Mossman's apparent betrayal is not telegraphed with a dramatic music or even flashing lights. It's just a conversation, it's a decision, a quiet moment that hits harder because you're given the room to interpret it. Even Alex, one of the game's most beloved characters, is developed not through exposition, but through presence. Her dialogue is smart, she reacts to situations believably, she jokes, she worries, and she fights beside you, and she feels real. In many ways, Half-Life 2 tells its story like a film without ever abandoning the language of playing a game. You as the player are never passive, you're always moving, you're always present in each scene. The opening chapters serve as the introduction into the world. City 17 is quiet but tense, and the player's given the rare opportunity to explore before combat even begins. You walk through train stations, apartment buildings, and courtyards, absorbing the dystopian atmosphere around you. There's no obvious hand-holding, but every element of design teaches you. Guards push you around, surveillance watches you constantly, civilians speak in hushed tones, and the sense of oppression is everywhere. When you're finally given a weapon, it feels earned, and the sudden change in pace is exhilarating. You're now on the run, and Half-Life 2 never lets up from here. After this, the game shifts into survival and traversal. Root Canal is a raw and scrappy level. You're using pipes, alleys, and ruined buildings to escape, with headcrabs, barnacles, and Combine soldiers keeping you on your toes. Here, Valve introduces the environmental puzzle elements, how to move, how to think, how to look at the world as something you can manipulate. Then the water hazard. This airboat section could have easily been overly tedious, but it's saved by stellar pacing. You get breaks from the vehicle to open gates or explore side areas. The level plays with elevation, surprise attacks, and the use of the physics engine to control the environment. Just as the boat starts getting repetitive, you're handed a weaponized version, and suddenly you're tearing through enemies instead of running from them. When you reach Black Mesa East, it's your first real chance to catch your breath. You get character development, physics gun training, and a glimpse at how the Resistance fighters live. Alex and Eli, they feel like real people because of the naturalistic way they speak and behave, but the piece established here is very brief as you move on to Ravenholm. And this is a section I was at least somewhat aware of before stepping into Half-Life 2. This is the infamous horror chapter. It's a dramatic shift in tone, a self-contained nightmare that could have easily come from a totally different game. The pacing here slows initially. You're forced to rely on clever physics-based traps and sparse ammo. It's here that the gravity gun truly shines, turning saw blades and cinder blocks into deadly weapons. The level is dark, tense, and ingenious. It proves that Half-Life 2 isn't afraid to take risks with pacing and tone. Following this, we return to the open road. Now you're driving a buggy across a windswept coastline, stopping to explore abandoned outposts, clear roadblocks, and fend off ambushes. This section shows how Valve balances freedom with structure. You get moments of solitude, eerie silence, and then explosive action. And one thing I had to look up after playing this is why the water table in the level so low, and why so many boats were just lying buried in sand. Where did all the water go? And it's hinted that the Combine is even transporting much of the Earth's water away, but the coastlines are drying up. This is never actually explained to you in the game, but if you observe your surroundings closely, you get a sense that the Combine invasion is more than just an assault on mankind. The Combine is literally sucking the life essence away from the whole planet. Then sand traps. This level changes the formula again. It introduces the antlines and the brilliant mechanic of walking only on non-sand surfaces to avoid triggering waves of enemies. Think of it as the floors made of lava. It's clever, it's tense, and completely unique within the game. Later, when you gain control over the antlines, it flips the dynamic and makes you feel far more empowered. You're still on the same coastline, but the context and gameplay are completely different. And getting control of the antlines was such a relief. As enemies, they were starting to get very annoying, and perhaps this was intentional, because when you get the ability to control them, it's incredibly satisfying, and it shifts the dynamic from feeling like prey to a predator pack leader. We then arrive at Nova Prospect. It's a brutalist prison fortress and arguably one of the most intense sections of the game. Here, your command over the antlines becomes a fully fledged mechanic. You're no longer just reacting, you're strategizing, you're now a commander of these bugs. The level layout feels claustrophobic, and the visual language tells a story of decay and horror. Prison cells, experimentation chambers, and the Combine conversion machinery, it conveys the true terror of the world. Then comes Entanglement. This is where the pace alternates between puzzle solving, AI-assisted combat with Alex, and great storytelling. It's one of the most narratively dense chapters, culminating in an excellent teleportation sequence that it recontextualizes the entire story up to this point, and again, the game shifts gears and reinvents itself just as it threatens to settle into a plain routine. You then return to City 17, and everything has changed. The revolution has begun. You're now leading squads of resistance fighters through urban warfare scenarios. These chapters are more linear, but feature large-scale battles, environmental destruction, and tactical decision-making. This isn't just normal gunplay, it's now a war story. The pacing escalates as you push deeper into combined territory. Buildings collapse, striders roam the streets, and the city becomes a ruinous playground of cover-based combat, scripted events, and vertical design. Valve never loses sight of the narrative or atmosphere. You're still exploring, still reacting to the world, but the stakes feel far larger than they ever have in the game. I must say that the need to destroy so many striders at one of the levels was a bit tedious and definitely overstayed its welcome, since they took so many shots to take down. The striders were handled a lot better in episode 2 with the Magnuson device, which you needed a good aim to hit the striders, but after swapping to a sidearm to shoot the explosive, they died immediately, and this felt a lot more satisfying to play than shooting them 7 times with a rocket launcher. And then we reach the final chapters, which are as much an art installation as level design. As you're inside the Citadel, everything about the experience becomes very surreal. The scale is almost incomprehensible, architecture defies logic, gravity shifts and the colours flatten to these unnatural tones. You then become stripped of your weapons and handed back an overcharged gravity gun. This is now capable of obliterating enemies. The power fantasy peaks here. You're no longer the hunted, you are the vanguard against the Combine. But just as you've become so incredibly powerful and unstoppable, it completely inverts this at the end. The game doesn't end with a triumph, but with stasis. The G-Man reappears, time stops, and you are removed from the world once again. This is not an ending, it's just a pause, and this leads on to the additional chapters of episode 1 and 2. These are 2 masterfully crafted expansions which have as much care in them as the main game. All of this culminated into the most renowned cliffhanger in gaming history, one that, in 2025, still has not been resolved, and somehow that makes it far more powerful. I've then had to lore max as much as possible about the Half-Life universe to at least have a desperate understanding of what might happen next. And it would be dishonest to say that Half-Life 2 looks modern in 2025. Its textures are simple, its character models are aged, but despite this the game remains beautiful. But why is this? It's because its art direction is so deliberate. City 17 is a dystopian vision. The Eastern European architecture, the colour palette of greys and pale blues, the contrast between old world architecture and alien machinery is visually striking even today. The source engine's lighting and physics, while surpassed by modern tools, they still convey a powerful sense of realism. The way objects move, the weight of the gravity gun, the lighting in tight corridors, these elements all give the game a tactile, lived-in quality. And then there are moments of pure visual poetry. The sunset on the coast, the eerie stillness of Ravenholm, the cold majestic of the Citadel. These moments are not dated, they are timeless. In fact, I would argue Half-Life 2 looks better than many of the newer games we have because it understands restraint. It doesn't overload the screen with effects, it doesn't drown you in user interface options, it gives you space to see, to feel, and to imagine. And I would strongly argue that the more subtle visuals in Half-Life 2, they're more visually pleasing than a lot of the modern games that use these extreme use of post-processing techniques that just make games feel ugly to look at, and they throttle your PC in doing so. So why else in 2025 is this 20-year-old game still more compelling than most games released today? It largely comes down to what we've already said, that Half-Life 2 is built on real intent. Every level has purpose, every mechanic is introduced with care. The game never wastes your time, it respects your intelligence. Modern AAA games often confuse more with better. They add unnecessary crafting systems, giant open worlds, RPG mechanics, season passes, but few ask, what does the player actually do? And Half-Life 2 answers the question brilliantly. You move, you fight, you solve, you explore. Every chapter introduces a new idea to play with, and then it moves on. No filler, no fluff, just expertly paced, well-considered gameplay. And even the length is perfect, about 12 hours or so if you're taking your time. It's long enough to feel like a journey, short enough to be tight, replayable, and memorable. And crucially, the game doesn't insult you. It doesn't overly tutorialize every mechanic. It assumes you're smart enough to figure things out. And if you aren't, the environment teaches you naturally. That confidence in the player is rare these days, and it's part of why playing Half-Life 2 in the current year feels so refreshing. It's not nostalgic, it's just good. Half-Life 2 changed the industry. The physics engine, environmental storytelling, and seamless narrative delivery became the blueprint for generations of games to come. But in 2025, it's also a reminder of what we've lost. In a world where so many games are built to be monetized to keep players engaged through artificial progression systems, Half-Life 2 felt like a breath of fresh air. It's complete, it's coherent, and it's satisfying. It doesn't need a battle pass, it doesn't need daily challenges, it doesn't even need a traditional story arc. What it needed is craft, care, and a strong vision. And perhaps more ironically, it now feels ahead of its time once again. Today we see some games trying to recapture this design philosophy, and it also shows that there's still hunger for smart, self-contained, narrative-rich experiences. Half-Life 2 is their ancestor, their muse. And while Valve has never given us a true Half-Life 3, the legend of Half-Life 2 grows because of that void. Its influence is felt everywhere, its ideas live on. It's not a relic, it's a foundation. And if you want to know more about the game design and making of Half-Life 2, while there are some good documentaries out there, they've introduced a game developer commentary section following the 20-year anniversary of the game, so you can listen to the devs talk about each section in detail and what went through creating what's in front of you.
28 transitions later. After stringing together a few levels with dark tunnels as transition spaces, we realized we could subvert player expectations by building another one that appeared to be a transition, but instead contained something else. Like everyone else, we saw 28 Days Later in 2002, loved it, and immediately wanted to create an escalating zombie encounter in one of our dark tunnels. It came together quickly, and we were pleased with the result. Years later, we met Alex Garland, the writer of the film. He had played and enjoyed Half-Life 2, and we confessed that his movie inspired this section.
In 2025, Half-Life 2 is over 20 years old, but it doesn't feel like a museum piece. It feels relevant, it feels vital. It remains a towering example of how games can tell stories, deliver thrills, and build worlds without sacrificing design or pacing. It's a game that teaches you how to pay attention, how to listen, and how to think. And in an industry obsessed with growth metrics and content pipelines, that lesson might be more important than ever now. Half-Life 2 is not just still good, it's still great. A masterpiece that shines brighter with each passing year. And if you've never played it before, just like me, it might be the perfect time to finally pick up the crowbar. Now again, I hope you enjoyed. Do the thing the algorithm likes. Let me know if you want any other games covered. I've recently playing through Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, and I'm also playing through Fear for the first time. So if you want any initial impressions of these games that released over 2 decades ago, let me know down below. And again, thank you very much for watching.